Imagine that you always have a silent companion with you, your own shadow. It follows you, but when you turn around, it immediately hides behind you. We rarely think about it, but it affects us more than we realize. What if the key to understanding ourselves is hidden in this dark side of our personality? Many of us have experienced moments when we do things we can't explain, or experience emotional outbursts, anger, envy, resentment, that are completely out of character. Have you ever found yourself thinking, did I just say those harsh words that don't sound like me? In fact, you did. It's just that this part of you is usually carefully hidden. In psychology, such cases are called manifestations of the shadow, the very hidden side of the personality that we are going to talk about today. Or maybe you've wondered why you repeat things you've judged in others. For example, you swore you wouldn't get angry like your father, but one day you snapped in anger. Or you may have noticed that you keep attracting similar unpleasant situations in your life. All of these mysterious twists and turns are clues from our shadow. The idea of the psychological shadow was introduced to science by the famous psychoanalyst Carl Jung. In everyday language, we often speak of demons or skeletons in the closet, essentially referring to the same hidden, unrecognized things in ourselves. Jung put this idea into a coherent psychological concept and showed how important it is to recognize it. In this video, we will explore in simple terms what was meant by the principle of follow your shadow. This metaphor means that instead of running away from your problems and dark qualities, try to follow them, explore them. In other words, see why moving toward your own shadow can ultimately transform your sense of self, and why it can change the way you feel about yourself. You'll learn why it's important to work with your shadow side rather than pushing it deeper inside you, and how the shadow manifests in everyday life, using examples from literature and real-life situations. And at the end, you will learn a lesson that will help you on the path to accepting your shadow and, as a result, living a more holistic and free life. So be sure to watch to the end. What is the shadow in Jungian psychology? So what is meant by our shadow? The concept was introduced by the Swiss psychoanalyst Carl Jung, one of the founders of depth psychology. Simply put, the shadow is the dark side of our personality, a set of qualities, desires, and impulses that we do not recognize in ourselves. Anything in ourselves that seems unacceptable, unworthy, or frightening, we tend to push out of consciousness. Simply put, it is as if we hide and try to forget undesirable character traits in the depths of our soul, where our psychological shadow is formed. As the poet Robert Bly figuratively observed, each of us, from childhood on, seems to put all the rejected parts of ourselves into an invisible bag that we carry behind our backs. Over time, the sack fills up, weighing down our souls, and everything inside sinks into the darkness of unconsciousness. Jung believed that everyone has such a shadow. It is largely formed in childhood and adolescence, when we learn which sides of ourselves to show to the world and which are better hidden. Imagine a young child who spontaneously displays various emotions and traits. He or she may be moody, angry, bullying, boastful, or crying. But as he grows up, his parents and society make it clear that some of these things are bad or shameful. For example, a boy is told, "Boys don't cry, don't be a wimp," and he learns to suppress his vulnerability and hide his tears. A girl is told, "Good girls don't get angry, don't yell," and she learns to smile even when anger is boiling inside. In this way, parts of her natural reactions and emotions are sent into the shadow. Similarly, all sorts of personality expressions, anything that doesn't fit into our idea of a good self, fall into the shadow over time. These can be negative emotions, aggression, envy, greed, weaknesses, cowardice, sentimentality, laziness, or even natural instincts, sexuality, lust for power, love of risk. What we were stigmatized as bad in childhood or in society, we try not to see in ourselves. The more the environment demands conformity to a certain image, the more aspects have to be repressed. For example, a person from a religious upbringing may repress his sexuality, believing it to be sinful, while a person raised in a competitive environment may be ashamed of his weakness or sensitivity. Each of us received a different set of messages as children about what we should be and what we should not be. These unspoken rules make up our shadow. Note that each person's shadow is formed in his or her own way. What you repress, another person may manifest freely, and vice versa. It is better to honestly study your own reactions and desires, no matter how wrong they may seem. It is important to realize that the shadow is not necessarily something evil or frightening. It is simply those aspects of your personality that you have repressed because you find them unacceptable. It can also be quite neutral or even good qualities that were not accepted in your environment. For example, a child may be very dreamy and creative, but if he or she has been strictly focused on serious things, spontaneity and creativity may have been suppressed. Or a teenager who has been told that showing tenderness is a weakness may hide his softness by becoming outwardly rude. Over time, the person does not realize that these qualities have not gone away, they just live in the unconscious. Jung figuratively described the human psyche as a combination of the persona, the mask we wear to society, and the shadow, the hidden other side of that mask. The persona is our consciously chosen image of who we think we are and want to appear to be. For example, I am kind and polite. I am strong and independent. I am fun-loving, the soul of the company. And everything that does not fit into this desired image goes into the shadow. If I have convinced myself that I am always kind, my anger will be repressed. If I pride myself on being humble, my ambitious ambitions may be hidden in the darkness. So every positive image has its shadowy opposite. It is said that the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. When a person desperately tries to demonstrate only the ideal image, unlived qualities accumulate in the dark. This dark half often manifests itself beyond our control. Psychologists say that the shadow dwells in the unconscious, an area of the psyche of which we are not directly aware. But from time to time, shards emerge from this shadow in the form of unexpected emotions, dreams, reservations, or outbursts of behavior that we later regret. Have you ever said or done something unexpected to yourself and later wondered, was that really me? This isn't like me. This is the signal that your shadow has been working and reminding you of its existence. Now try to recall a situation in which you suddenly reacted to something, even though you are not usually aware of it. Perhaps it was an outburst of anger over something trivial, or a strong insult, although nothing terrible happened outwardly. Ask yourself a question. What hidden part of me might have manifested at that moment? What feelings or traits do you usually try not to show, but then they broke through? This is the first step in recognizing your shadow. Don't worry if you don't get a clear answer right away. It's not a quick journey. However, you have already done an important thing. You have focused your attention on yourself. In time, understanding will come more easily. Why is it important to work with your shadow and not suppress it? The logical question is, since these dark traits are a part of us, perhaps it's easier to keep them locked away and not bring them up. Unfortunately, by pushing the shadow further and further away, we don't get rid of it. The repressed shadow continues to operate from the subconscious, often at the most inopportune time. Jung warned, if you don't recognize your dark side, it will begin to control you, and then you will call it fate or destiny. In other words, until we face our repressed qualities, they will secretly influence our lives. Trying to completely suppress or deny your shadow can lead to inner conflict and even psychological problems. Imagine a person who tries to be perfectly good and right all their life. denying themselves the right to make mistakes or have negative feelings. What happens? All that is human, resentment, anger, selfish desires, does not go away, but piles up inside, like steam in a cauldron. Sooner or later, it explodes. The exemplary person suddenly breaks into hysterics, commits an uncontrollable act, or sinks into depression. It is impossible to wear a mask indefinitely. And then his neighbors whisper among themselves, "Mr. Perfect, the roof blew off last Thursday." It happens, and vice versa. A person for many years does everything right and approximately, and then suddenly drastically changes the way of life, leaves work, divorces, goes into all sorts of mischief. Such dramatic changes as a midlife crisis often indicate that the shadow has been locked away for too long. Suppressing the shadow is like trying to keep an inflated ball at the bottom of a pond. The more you drown it, the more forcefully it rises to the surface. By the way, psychological research confirms that constant suppression of emotions leads to increased levels of stress, anxiety, and even psychosomatic symptoms. On the contrary, the ability to recognize and express your feelings correlates with a stronger psyche and healthy relationships with others. Many people fear, what if I let my bad feelings take over? In fact, the opposite is true. The more you recognize your shadow, the less it controls you. Impulses that have been repressed in the dark are dangerous because they come out uncontrollably, while impulses that have been recognized and explored are less frightening and gradually become manageable. In addition, unrecognized sides often manifest in our interactions with others through a mechanism psychologists call projection. We seem to project our own unacceptable qualities onto others without realizing it. Have you noticed how we sometimes resent in others what we do not accept in ourselves? A person may vehemently condemn someone else's selfishness without realizing that he is also selfish. Or, on the contrary, he may accuse everyone around him of being unfair to him without recognizing his own aggression or guilt. Carl Jung wrote, "Everything that annoys us in others can lead to an understanding of ourselves. If there's something in someone else's behavior that tugs at our heartstrings, it's almost certainly our own shadow that this person is involuntarily mirroring to us." So here's another exercise for you. Think about the quality or trait that most irritates you in other people. What is it? Arrogance, greed, whining, irresponsibility? Now ask yourself honestly, is there anything like that lurking in me? Usually the things that make us most angry or upset in others are a reflection of our own repressed qualities. You may sometimes manifest these traits, or conversely, you may carefully forbid them, but they live in the depths. It is not easy to admit this, but it is extremely useful for self-knowledge. It may be uncomfortable to recognize such traits in yourself, but it is honest. This step opens the door to real development, because you can't change what you don't recognize. Thus, by working with our shadow, we reduce the risk of unconsciously damaging relationships with others and with ourselves. By recognizing our repressed emotions and motives, we stop blindly obeying them. For example, recognizing your anger does not mean becoming angrier. On the contrary, it means learning to express it in an ecological way that does not destroy yourself or others. By accepting the fact that you are capable of envy or fear, you can consciously work with these feelings, turning envy into motivation, fear into caution, rather than letting them secretly control you. The shadow can also hide positive qualities that have had no place in your conscious life. Psychologists sometimes call this the golden shadow, undiscovered potential. For example, a person who considers himself mediocre and does not allow himself to show ambition, then his strength and talent are hidden in the shadow. For example, a girl who is convinced that she is not very smart may unconsciously suppress her intellectual abilities and not realize herself, but will bow before the intelligence of others. By recognizing this golden shadow, she could begin to develop her own talents and self-confidence. In other words, integrating the shadow is the way to a more holistic personality. It is a key step in the process Jung called individuation, becoming a whole, self-actualizing person. Jung even remarked, "It is better to be whole than good," implying that it is important to accept oneself completely rather than strive to appear flawless. When we accept all parts of ourselves, the good and the not so good, we become more honest with ourselves and feel an inner relief. There is no need to put on the mask of perfection, and there is less inner tension. As a result, you feel more alive, energetic, creative, real, and free. In addition, by accepting your imperfections, you become more tolerant of others. You will begin to see people as they are, with their strengths and weaknesses. Once you accept your own flaws, it's easier to accept other people's, isn't it? This is how empathy and tolerance develop. Relationships with others become more honest and kind because there is no longer a need to appear perfect and no desire to judge harshly someone else's darkness. Here is another mini exercise. Name 3 people for whom you have sincere joy and envy. Now identify the traits of these people that you are most attracted to. Great! Now you have the key to your golden shadow. Not bad, and this is only the middle of the video. The concept of the shadow is so universal that we see its motifs in many stories and works. In Oscar Wilde's novel, A Picture of Dorian Gray, Dorian wished to appear impeccably noble and handsome, and hid all his sins and vices as if in a magical portrait that grew old and ugly in his place. But in the end, the hidden wickedness ruined Dorian himself. His story is an allegory about how you can't hide your shadow forever without paying the price. It will still show up, if not on the front of life, then on the underside. Even in modern stories, we find this idea. For example, in the Star Wars saga, the hero Luke Skywalker enters a dark cave and fights the ghost of Darth Vader, and when he wins, he sees the face under the mask is himself. In this way, the authors showed that the border between the light and the dark side lies within ourselves, and the hero had to recognize the possibility of darkness within himself in order not to succumb to it. Such plots are a warning to us in reality. Of course, not everything in life is so dramatic, but the principle is similar. The more we deny something in ourselves, the more unexpectedly and painfully it can manifest itself. We see examples all around us when people who ostentatiously preach strict morality suddenly find themselves involved in scandals that reveal their secret side. Or when a quiet, universally respected neighbor suddenly commits a reckless act that shocks everyone who knew him as quiet. Imagine a person who for years has been extremely polite, avoided conflict, and seemed very calm to everyone. One day, however, all that repranger pent up inside him, and he let it out. For example, by lashing out in an empty place, or even starting a fight. People around him are shocked. This is not like him. And that's just a part of him that he didn't want to see in himself. In everyday life, the shadow is not necessarily so loud. It can slip through in little things. In a sarcastic joke that suddenly reveals your hidden resentment. In an outburst of jealousy when you thought you weren't jealous. In putting off an important task for fear of failure that you don't want to admit to yourself. Even our dreams and reservations are sometimes the voice of our shadow. It is not without reason that it is said, "What is in the mind of a sober man is on the tongue of a drunkard." Under the influence of alcohol or stress, what we normally control and hide often manifests itself. For example, if you dream that you are being chased by someone scary, or that something scary is happening, think about what feelings dominated the dream: fear, anger, shame. Often the figure who frightens you in a dream symbolizes your own repressed impulse. The aggressor in a nightmare may represent your repressed aggression. Chaos or disaster represents your uncontrollable fear. Dreams paint metaphors for our psyche, and if you learn to listen to them, you can learn a great deal about your shadow. The flip side of this phenomenon is our excessive admiration If you put someone on a pedestal and think, I wish I could be as talented/bold/successful as he is, you may have those qualities too. You just don't allow yourself to believe in them. The shadow holds not only vices, but also unrealized virtues. Once you realize this, you stop idealizing others and start developing these qualities in yourself. By the way, the shadow also often interferes in close relationships. Family members or friends may unconsciously project their unrecognized qualities onto each other. For example, a person who is insecure about his or her own worth may become pathologically jealous of a spouse for no reason. His or her own fear of being abandoned turns into suspicion of the partner. Another example is someone who idealizes a beloved person, overlooking obvious flaws, because he unconsciously endows them with the qualities he does not see in himself. By understanding these mechanisms, we can avoid many conflicts and disappointments in relationships by discussing our feelings honestly and recognizing our projections. In summary, let's list the main signs that your shadow is making itself known. You overreact to someone else's behavior, even though the occasion is objectively insignificant. For example, you get very angry at someone's way of speaking or living more than you should. You strive to appear perfect good at all times and in all things. You don't allow yourself to make mistakes, show anger or weakness. Perhaps the imperfect feelings are still alive and building up inside you. You've just learned to hide them, which means they may come out one day. You repeat what you condemn in others, or you are caught in an inconsistency with your own principles. Afterwards, you ask yourself, did I really do that? A quality that you do not recognize is pointed out to you. An outsider can see that you are, say, resentful or hot-tempered, but you sincerely believe yourself to be calm. So this trait is pushed into the shadows. You idealize another person, or conversely, consider someone to be the embodiment of evil without sufficient reason. Extreme judgments speak of the projection of your shadow. You have nightmarish dreams or obsessive fantasies in which you see frightening objects or images. Often these are symbols of your repressed feelings that are worth thinking about. By the way, working with images from dreams sometimes has an amazing effect. For example, a young man had a recurring dream for several months in which a huge black wolf attacked him in a dark forest. When he woke up, he was in a cold sweat and could not understand why this nightmare tormented him so much. When he decided to discuss the dream with a psychologist, it turned out that the wolf was a symbol of his repressed anger at his strict father. In reality, he never told his father that he felt resentment and anger. But in the dream, these feelings took the form of an aggressive animal. After realizing this, the young man was able to talk openly with his father about his feelings and found healthier ways to vent his anger. After a while, he stopped dreaming about the wolf. Interestingly, whole groups of people, such as a community or a nation, can also have their own collective shadow. When a community persistently sees only the positive side of itself, it tends to project evil outward, looking for enemies or scapegoats to blame for all its problems. We have seen many times in history how overconfidence in our own righteousness has led to the demonization of others. Recognizing and working through the collective shadow is a difficult task, but necessary for peaceful coexistence. To make all of this clearer, let's use a conditional example. Let's say that Mary always tried to be kind and pleasant to everyone. She avoided conflicts, helped everyone, never expressed anger. She was told from childhood that it is not nice to be angry. Over the years, those around her got used to seeing Mary as a very gentle, unproblematic person. But inside, tension was building. Fulfilling other people's wishes at the expense of herself, Maria felt irritated and tired, although she did not show it. Sometimes she would boil inside. I wanted to yell at one of the requesters. "Yes, leave me alone, I'm tired." But out loud, Maria just smiled and answered quietly, "Okay, of course I will help." Once there was a breakthrough, the accumulated resentment came out. Maria suddenly snapped and said harsh words to a close friend about seemingly trivial matter. It was a shock to her friend and to Maria herself. She was ashamed and did not understand what had come over her. As she sorted out the situation, Maria realized that her repressed shadow had made itself known. All those years of being a good girl, her repressed anger and sense of her own limitations had not disappeared. They were just hiding in the depths. After the incident, Maria decided to do some work on her shadow. She began to notice the first signs of irritation and to acknowledge them honestly, instead of smiling at them. She practiced gently saying no to requests that were burdensome to her. After a while, she no longer needed to store up anger. She immediately expressed her displeasure in the correct form. A friend with whom the quarrel occurred noticed that Maria now understood him better. She became more open, and conflicts between them almost no longer remained. Our heroine, having accepted her shadow trait, the ability to get angry, did not become an angry person. She simply learned to use this energy for her own good, to protect her boundaries in time and openly, without exploding. Her personality became more whole, both kind and able to stand up for herself. Let's also consider the opposite example of the golden shadow. From his youth, Sergei considered himself a down-to-earth and uncreative person. He admired talented musicians and artists, although he could sometimes laugh at them, calling them not of this world. It was a protective reaction. Deep down he envied them, although he did not admit it even to himself, because deep down Sergei also dreamed of creating, but was afraid that he would not succeed. As a teenager he wrote poems, but once he was teased, and since then he abandoned this activity, deciding that art was not for him. Years went by, Sergei started serious work, but the feeling of dissatisfaction did not leave him. In the process of self-discovery, he realized that his creative part had been in the shadows all these years, waiting for an outlet. Now Sergei has started writing again, albeit for himself, but it has brought him great relief and joy. He confesses that he feels more alive, as if he has regained a lost piece of his soul. This case shows that embracing our shadow can unlock our hidden potential and enrich our lives. As we can see from these examples, working with the shadow helps not only to neutralize the bad in us, but also to uncover the hidden good. By accepting both one's anger and one's talents, one becomes freer and more harmonious. In each case, the key step is the same: to take an honest look deep within and recognize what has been denied. Now that you have watched the video up to this point, you already have an idea of where to begin this inner work. All that remains is to take the first step toward yourself. We've discussed what the shadow is and why it's important to accept it as part of you. But how do you begin to work with the shadow in your daily life? Here are some practical steps to get you started. Notice your emotions. Get in the habit of noticing when you're really hurt or upset by something. In those moments, ask yourself, what does my reaction say about me? Why did this affect me so much? This shifts the focus from the external situation to your internal state and the shadow's cues. Keep a self-observation journal. At the end of the day, it's helpful to write down instances in which you experienced strong emotions: irritation, resentment, shame, fear, and honestly reflect on what hidden sides of yourself were affected. As you put your thoughts on paper, it's easier to see recurring motives and gain a deeper understanding of your inner processes. It's helpful to reread these notes from time to time. You'll notice recurring triggers and gain a deeper understanding of your patterns. Give repressed feelings an outlet. Find healthy ways to express what you normally repress. If you are angry, exercise or at least hit your pillow. If you're sad, let yourself cry, draw your feelings, or confide in a loved one in a conversation. It is important not to keep everything inside. By letting your emotions out, you acknowledge your right to experience and live them. Practice self-acceptance. Give up the habit of blaming yourself for bad thoughts or feelings. Accept them with curiosity and understanding. I wonder why this anger or fear arose in me. There must be a reason. Remember that everyone has a shadow side, you are not alone. Being kind to yourself and even a little humor can help you get through difficult discoveries more easily. Ask for support when you need it. If working with the shadow side causes too much emotion or brings up old psychological traumas, do not hesitate to contact a psychologist or psychotherapist. It's not a weakness. On the contrary, it's a brave step to recognize that you need help on the path of self-discovery. An experienced professional will be able to create a safe space and help you experience and integrate difficult feelings in an ecological way. You can also find a support group or interest forum. Sharing experiences with people who are also working on themselves will remind you that you are not alone and give you motivation. So subscribe on my channel. That's place of people who evolve. As you begin to use these approaches, over time you will notice changes. The shadow will cease to be a frightening unknown and will gradually become your ally in self-discovery. Now, let's do the little meditation we promised you to make contact with your shadow side. Find a comfortable position, preferably sitting with a straight back. If you wish, close your eyes. Take a deep breath and exhale slowly. Feel the support under your feet, your breath. Now imagine that you are in a peaceful, quiet place where you feel protected. It can be an imaginary garden with soft sunlight, a cozy room, or any place where you feel comfortable. There is soft light in this place, and the image of your shadow begins to appear beside you. Maybe it is a dark figure. Maybe it is just a feeling or an image of yourself, a reflection of your repressed qualities. Try to look at this image without fear. Notice how it looks. Maybe it is angry, or sad, or afraid. Or maybe it seems strong and confident, the kind of person you miss being. Know that this is a part of you, and it is coming out of the shadows because you are ready to see it. Now mentally address your shadow. Say, I see you. I know that you are a part of me, even though I have avoided you in the past. What important thing do you want to show me? Listen. Perhaps the answer will come in the form of sensations, thoughts, or images. Be still for a few moments and allow your shadow to express itself. Accept whatever comes up without criticism or judgment. Just observe and listen. If you feel a strong emotion, take another few deep breaths. As you breathe in, imagine gently embracing your shadow, accepting it as a longtime friend who, although it frightened you, was actually trying to help you understand yourself better. And as you exhale, let go of the tension and fear. Thank your shadow for coming. Promise it that from now on, you will try to pay attention to it, not chase it away. Now gradually let go of the images. Let your inner shadow friend dissolve into the surrounding space, or gently enter you like a stream of warm energy connecting with your soul. Feel your body here and now. Feel the support again. Your breath. Breathe in, breathe out, and gently open your eyes if they are closed. This meditation is just one way to get to know your shadow. Of course, fully recognizing and integrating your shadow cannot be done all at once. It is a gradual process, perhaps a lifelong endeavor. Be patient with yourself and celebrate even small advances. Every small step in accepting yourself is important. Working with your shadow is the path of the brave. It can be challenging at first to accept things about yourself that you've turned away from for years. But admitting your vulnerability is not weakness. It is true courage that deserves respect. By the way, people around you usually appreciate such honesty. You are showing your true self without a mask. Remember, everyone has a dark side, but it does not make us bad. It confirms our human nature. It is not without reason that the ancient yin-yang symbol depicts light and dark as two inseparable parts. In the white sector, there is a dot of black, and in the black sector, there is a drop of white. This reminds us that there are no completely pure people, and that both beginnings are intertwined within each of us. By following your shadow, you are actually going to yourself. It's a journey that leads to deep self-understanding, the freedom to be real. Yes, sometimes the path leads through darkness, but in that darkness, you will find hidden treasures, strength wisdom, and the true essence of light that illuminates your life from within. It is not without reason that in many fairy tales, the hero goes into the darkness, into a cave or a forest, to defeat the dragon and find the treasure. Only by defeating the monster, a symbol of his fears, does he receive his reward. Similarly, by facing your inner dragon, you will gain valuable gifts, knowledge of yourself, deep wisdom, and true inner strength. Do not be afraid of your own shadow. Reach out to it, and it will no longer frighten you. Remember, there is no dawn without night, and by accepting your darkness, you give your inner light a chance to shine. Courageously follow your shadow, and you will meet your true self before you. You will discover new powers and possibilities that you never suspected before. I wish you success on this path of self-discovery and transformation. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, take a look back. Your shadow is not happy.